There's two sides to every coin. I've already talked about my top 5 favorite books that I've read in 2017. Now let's talk about the worst. This May Kill Me. Love Stage. Love Stage is a manga series about a young boy who is forced to dress like a girl during a commercial shoot. The other boy involved with the commercial ends up falling in love with him, but is horrified to learn 10 years later that he's actually a guy. It's a fun premise. It's just too bad the execution was shit. Every character, save for maybe one, is a whiny, self-centered douche. There's even one scene where one of the boys, one of the men in the relationship, tries to force oral sex on the other. He literally tries to sexually assault him, and it's played up for laughs. I could go on forever about my disdain for this series, but let me say this. It's not because the manga is graphic that I don't like it. I'm fine with sex in manga. One of my favorite manga series so far, Hide and Seek, is incredibly graphic. My biggest issue with Love Stage is that it's hollow. There's no heart or soul involved. Take your favorite manga, let's say, take Host Club. Strip away all the comedy and the decent character development, add gratuitous sex, and you have Love Stage. It's the worst manga I have ever read. It's even worse than Peach Girl, and Peach Girl is abysmal. I'm gonna give Love Stage an F. The only reason it's at the bottom of this list is it's like a band-aid, and I just want to rip it off fast. Sundog. I think I've finally found a bad Stephen King book. Sundog is a novella that came out of the Four Past Midnight collection. And let me tell ya, it's boring. Again, a decent premise. There's a demon dog living inside of a haunted camera, and every time someone takes a picture, it gets closer and closer to emerging into our world. A boy named Kevin is given a Polaroid 660 for his birthday, and upon realizing it may be haunted, he turns to a man named Ace Merrill, some skeevy old fart who runs an antique store, and he ultimately convinces Kevin to part with the camera. And that's all well and good. Biggest problem that I had with this book is there's an entire middle segment where Merrill tries to sell the camera to some paranormal enthusiasts, and it goes on forever. It's literally him going to someone and saying, "Hey, you want this camera?" And then the person's like, "No, fuck your camera, I don't trust you." And so then he goes to someone else, and he's like, "Hey, you want this camera?" And the person's like, "No, fuck you, I don't trust you. And fuck this camera, it's creepy." And that's the entire middle segment of the story. Now, when I was a kid, I suffered from cynophobia, which is an irrational fear of dogs. And even now, I'm still kinda weary about them. This book should have terrified me. It's about a demon dog. To me, that's scary. The thought of that scares me. It's just too bad this story didn't scare me. It has its creepy moments, but aside from the unneeded middle portion where Merrill's trying to sell the camera, the book falls apart and becomes an unintentional comedy at the end. Kevin and his dad show at the antique store, and Merrill is pressing the camera button and screaming, "Please save me!" I know King was trying to be scary, but just no. I laughed my ass off reading that. So pretty much we have a book that's kinda creepy at the beginning, boring as hell in the middle, and hilarious at the end. I don't think King meant to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and give this book a D+. Loamhedge. Oh, Brian Jakes. Loamhedge isn't just a bad Redwall novel, it's a bad novel in general. The story revolves around a young rabbit named Martha, who can't walk, and the Redwall warriors go on a quest to find a cure. I covered this in my actual review earlier in the year, but I'll say this. Jakes writes himself into a corner, and in an attempt to save the book, he ends up floundering the entire final third of it. Martha magically starts walking again without the cure. There are several annoying characters that make me want to grind my teeth to the pulp. And the final battle, which is usually grand in scale, for most Redwall novels, is nothing more than half a page of watered down shit. This book literally felt like a fan story instead of a novel that was written by a talented writer. I already graded this in my review, but if I remember correctly, I gave Loamhedge a D+. Cold Sleep Lullaby. Or as I like to call it, rape, rape, and more rape. Andrew Brown paints scenery like a champ, but his characters are wooden, the mystery is uninspired, and he uses rape like a 17-year-old boy uses the word fuck. Again, I reviewed this earlier in the year, so just click on the annotation if you really want to see my full thoughts on the matter. I feel like I would actually like Andrew Brown's other works, because I can't help but feel like this might have just been a dud, but it was one hell of a dud. I gave this book a D in my review, but it being the end of the year, I've had some time to sort of null it over in my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and change my tune, and give Cold Sleep Lullaby a D-. And before we get to our number one pick, here's a couple dishonorable mentions. And the number one worst book I've read this year is Temptation by Nora Roberts. I can't cover this here. I released a video in, I want to say March or April, maybe May, about why I'll never review Twilight, and I called upon this book as an example. I stated that this book, like Twilight 50 Shades of Grey, was a waste of my time, and it was just romantic fodder that was half-assed and thrown together to sell a quick buck. Yet the more I've thought of it, the more I've realized just what a shitstorm this book is. It's gonna need a review of its own. I can't cover it here. I hate it that much. So for now, I'm just gonna say, of course, Temptation gets an F. But stay tuned, I'll tell you why soon.